Well, welcome everybody. We appreciate you joining us here on this hot, almost July day, right? We've got one more day left in the month. My name is Matt Wren. I'm the Vice President of Business Development here at Moser Consulting. I'm just gonna give a quick overview of who Moser is, and then I'm gonna hand it off to my friends over at TD SYNNEX and Red Hat to give the presentation. So, Moser Consulting, we've been in business now for 26 years. It's hard to believe, it's been a long. And so Ty Moser is our CEO, president, was actually our first consultant. Site-based Oracle architect and continued to build to where we are today. We have two offices here in Indianapolis, one here, our headquarters on the north side, as well as one in downtown, and we also have an office out in Baltimore, Maryland. We're almost 400 employees strong. So it's been, I was employee number 78, so 7.5 years ago, so it's been great to see everybody join and continue growing our technologies. We do have 5 practices or 5 divisions here at Moser. We have our government service division that sells all of our Fed and state business. Then we have our 4 divisions that are where our technologies, our experts are. We have application services, business services, data analytics. We also have our own product within data analytics, which is called Honeycomb. It's a data lake managed services platform area where it's actually powered by Ansible automation platform on that too. And then finally our infrastructure services, where a majority of our Red Hat experts do sit. We do tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 support. Also do want to give a big thanks to Red Hat for being a sponsor and a great partner of ours. With all that said, I'm going to hand it over to Nick and Joni.
My name's Nick Turk. I'm a field solution architect with TD SYNNEX, and I want to just kind of tee things up here for Jory. He's the real expert on RHEL. But I want to give you a bit of a framework around it, and as always, make sure that we're aware of everything that Red Hat is doing. It goes well beyond just RHEL, and the ecosystem that they continue to build on and invest in is growing, and it really is starting to pay off. Though there's forever from Red Hat been kind of pillars that they use to rationalize and to kind of put a framework around what they've done for RHEL for many years. Those pillars, we're going to review those today. There's augmentation to RHEL that's relative to all of those different pillars. I'm going to review those with you, and then Jory's going to go through program updates, some new technical features, and then, of course, show you where you can go to check it out yourself. So those pillars that we're going to get into, right, are kind of the tenets of what RHEL is built around, but also everything that Red Hat does. And what you have to remember with everything you get from RHEL is that it's much more than the product. With a subscription from RHEL, you get support and expertise. It's there now, more than 25 years. That they've been providing to their client base. At the end of the day, RHEL has become an incredibly stable and solid foundation for some serious innovation to be done on top of. To the point where those companies that are doing the leading edge stuff are utilizing RHEL pretty much across the board, all the way from development to production, to maintain stability and the ability to quickly change and roll with the punches. Security is always, something you get from Red Hat. Everything that they touch gets hardened, gets tested thoroughly, and you have a fantastic feedback loop to take advantage of through that support mechanism and organization to keep security tight at the OS level. Another great thing you get from Red Hat every day is just like we see here today, this partner ecosystem, right? 3 tiers of companies coming together, Red Hat, our distribution partners like us, as well as Moser IT, all bringing awesome capabilities and their own sphere of skills to end users every day. So that's something that you don't get from just a community version of Linux. You get that from doing business with Red Hat. Lifecycle support and flexibility, right? You can count on release timeframes and things like that from Red Hat. It is not a shotgun kind of a community. It's something you can plan on, and that makes a big difference when you're running an enterprise. And to that end, the roadmaps that Red Hat is really good at providing and sticking to, right? They do as good a job as, well, shall I say, IBM, as sticking to what they commit to and making sure that they don't miss roadmap deadlines. And then at the end of the day, you know, RHEL is a great package for providing an enterprise with analytics, with an underlying platform that allows you to get feedback and insights into how your different devices, anything running RHEL, might be utilized. And that extends into other things like Ansible and the OpenShift environments that we spend most of our time now talking about, right? RHEL, it's great to get out here and talk about RHEL, believe me. We don't get to do that very often anymore. So it's actually really good for me as well to kind of get reacquainted with what's important, right, at the OS level. But RHEL is really, we're into the pillars now. First one's all around innovation, right? Providing a platform that allows a company to go well beyond what they're doing with the OS, to include ISVs off the shelf, but also modernization of current apps or new apps coming that they need to roll out. With RHEL, you can count on having access to the latest and greatest. Another one of the pillars is obviously to optimize your environment. RHEL, I mentioned, already gives you some great management analytics and things like that, feedback from the actual devices on how they're performing, how they're being utilized, and RHEL is available across the board. No matter if you're doing on-prem, VMware, Power, any cloud, you name it, you can deploy RHEL, and you can count on a version that's supported to be there and ready to support the workload you need it to, where you need it to. Protection, as I mentioned before, security is a big deal to Red Hat and will continue to be. The OS needs to be a stable and secure environment that everyone can trust, right? That the hardware can trust, as well as the software running on it can trust. And these days, that software stack is getting more and more complicated. So that trust and the ability to integrate throughout that software stack is huge. And that is the kind of work that continues to go on with RHEL. And at the end of the day, it comes down to trust, right? Who can you trust, and what platform can you trust as you move forward? And that really is RHEL. Has been and shall be into the future. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jory and let him tell you about all the cool new stuff.
So we're going to start with what's new in RHEL 8. Now, if anyone's giving me weird looks, yes, I know RHEL 8 is not the latest and greatest. The reason we're starting here is because there are plenty of folks not even on RHEL 8. They're still on RHEL 6, maybe 7, hopefully 7 at least, right? But let's start with what's new in RHEL 8, and we'll get on to the new good stuff. So with RHEL 8 compared to RHEL 7, we're not talking about 6 right now, it's a lot faster to get to hello world, meaning you can get your applications out faster. You're having the ability to plan with confidence. Your system is more and more stable with every major version. You're also getting the latest stable tools with each new version. So all development tools, any other tools, just to ensure your OS is running smoothly. Also, simpler deployment options. Now, we can go down a long list of these. You can standardize it via, just images to kick off. And yes, I am going to get a little deep in the weeds. I am technical. So we can use Ansible to deploy things. We can just use simple images, pixie boots. I'm going to stop there because now I'm getting way too deep. But once you get into the actual OS, they've made a change. So when you're installing applications, there's now what's known as application streams. You're not just doing this, well, you still can. There's the yum install, whatever your package name is. There's these application streams that actually will allow you to pull multiple collection of packages is the best way I can try to put it here. You're accessing the newer versions of them all, and it's supposed to be simpler. You can say this module with this version, it'll bring everything you need for example, PostgreSQL. You want everything that you need for that version, say PostgreSQL, the version number. You're going to get everything you need to make it run smoothly. This is just another view of how it looks to, compared to 7 to 8. So you have all these extra little repositories when you're on the system. That's quite a few, right? Now it's just simple. There's one thing compared, you got one compared to the 4. Pretty simple. Try to put it all in one versus several. So this is kind of a cool feature. Now this was available in RHEL 7 and potentially 6. I honestly don't know, but they've improved it. This is called Cockpit. It's a web interface for any Linux system that you have, RHEL Linux system. You could potentially get it on others, but we only care about RHEL here. That being said, this is one of the newer versions. You don't necessarily have to know Linux right off the bat. You can go to this web interface and kind of get a look at what's going on. So if you're having issues, you can come here, you get a quick view, say, all right, this thing is running out of CPU. I should do something, or call someone. So you don't have to know the command to go check that. So you can see everything right there. So additional things that have come in with this web console. More and more you find folks needing to virtualize their infrastructure, right? You can actually use RHEL to do that. Now, prior to Cockpit, you had to know commands or you had to have a desktop installed. That's kind of a hassle. They've moved away from that. Within Cockpit, they've actually allowed you to install a plugin called just Cockpit Machines. So you have a view to look at all your virtual machines, which is right here. And one beyond that, you can control your networking. You control your single sign-on config, meaning if you wanted to integrate your Active Directory, LDAP, what other authentication you use. You can set that all up via Cockpit versus trying to figure out the configs and commands. All right, so we've talked about 7 to 8. Here's RHEL 8.6. This is the latest iteration of RHEL right now, and I am actually telling you the truth. It's actually the latest of RHEL 8. So one of the big things right now is there's a new Red Hat developer subscription for individuals. Basically, any individual member of the Red Hat development program, you can get this for free. Just go make a Red Hat account. And you can get a single subscription of RHEL, up to 16 physical or virtual nodes. You support it yourself, but you get to use RHEL and test it and see if it's something you want to use for your development community and potentially production. And they've made this last, I want to say, about 60 days or so. And what about your teams? Can't just do it for the individual. There is subscriptions for teams. We want a whole team for an organization to be able to test these out, make sure it's the right fit for them. So again, development additions or subscriptions are at no charge. For an organization testing it, you get more nodes, so it'll be 25,000 physical or virtual. Typically, this is used for development. We don't recommend doing this for production, purely because you're not paying for it yet, so you don't have all the fanciness yet. And you're going to continue to get security updates, latest patches during all this. It's compliant with government, commercial, and security standards. And you can actually have monitoring of products using Red Hat Insights. Not going to go harp too much on Insights, but it is a cloud-based platform that Red Hat offers to every RHEL subscription. You get it with any RHEL subscription. So you're getting more value with that just by having access to this. And the gist of it is, it helps monitors all your systems. It'll tell you if there's any CVEs, meaning security vulnerabilities, that your system is not patched for. It'll tell you manage config drift. So if you have a config file that says, I want my Linux terminal to be blue, and for some reason one of your systems doesn't match that, you can use Insights to let you know that. Moving on. So now moving out of the RHEL 8, RHEL 9 is pretty darn new, fresh out of the box. So we're not going to spend too much on these slides. I know everyone doesn't want to hear this, but it's got the latest and greatest kernel, meaning it is the most hardened kernel. One super cool thing, at least cool to me, it's got WireGuard enabled natively in the kernel. WireGuard's a new VPN technology out there. Cool peer-to-peer type thing. I'm not going to get too deep, but it's very new, very fast, very encrypted, so usually secure. It's got core scheduling, so it helps you manage your CPUs a little better to help mitigate potential risks like Spectre, Meltdown down the road. So, cool thing, RHEL is now enabled for ARM devices. I do have to at least tell you one thing. It is not going to work on Raspberry Pis. I'm pretty sad about that myself. But yeah, you can use it on ARM devices, so smaller IoT devices that are low power typically. All right, Red Hat Enterprise Linux for Edge. So this is very similar to a normal RHEL box, but a little more minimal than, well, more minimal than a minimal install if you've gone through those installers. So it's meant for you to not really have to do much to provision it. You kind of just have an image, you deploy it, and you don't have to touch it much. You literally just run automation to manage it. You're not meant to go log in and do daily tasks on it. Now, let's talk about workstations real quick. So RHEL for workstations are purely more for development. You're using pretty beefy hardware, and when I say workstation, it is a computer, but it's a very beefy computer. Probably, everyone might think of it like a gaming rig, but RHEL. So, important stuff to know. If you get a Linux workstation for professionals, you've got a 10-year life cycle. You don't have to worry about it for a while. Certified hardware, which is pretty important. You want to make sure everything you bought is going to work. And best part is, if you're having issues, you don't know what's wrong, you need help, you can call someone up to help you. And you have an extensive partner ecosystem, so you have plenty of people to reach out to if you don't want to talk to Red Hat directly. Or if you do, start with them. Big thing to talk about is GNOME 40 is the latest desktop, so easiest way to put that, it's kind of looks, no, I'm actually not going to say my next statement. I was going to say it looked like a little like a Mac, but that's not really true anymore. Next step. But yeah.
Use that when nobody cares anymore.
Oh yeah. Appreciate that. But yeah, it's a great little desktop. It's got an environment, so you can click buttons. If you're a Windows person, you don't do command line, you have buttons to click. You can click all the normal applications. A little more technical. We're going to innovate a little bit. So this is relatively important for most system administrator type roles. So you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux Image Builder Service. What does that do for you? It allows you to make a gold image, meaning you need to create a RHEL image, so it'll have all your standards in place. You can put in whatever configs, anything you need installed. This service will help you wrap all of your standards up and put it in an image you can deploy out. So the nice thing about this image, it's not necessarily new, but this is. They've actually integrated into the Cockpit software we talked about a moment ago. So you can run it all from Cockpit, a nice button click type deal versus trying to do it all command line. If you're not comfortable on command line, RHEL realizes that. We want you to have that flexibility. So these are just the basic high-level steps to use Image Builder. I'm just going to read them off. So choose which platform you want, whether you're putting it on the cloud, on-prem, or just at the edge. Use the tool, whether it's on-premise or you're using it on the console.redhat.com. So I'm glad that I read that because when I say console.redhat.com, that's the cloud platform they use. So Insights is up there as well. That cloud platform is the bee's knees. So you can access all the good stuff Red Hat's got there. There's actually a new OpenShift installer configurator up there. I think that's what they're actually calling it. And you can create your blueprint using this tool, whether it's on your Linux server or in the cloud. You actually can build the image, and basically you click a button and it'll build it off your Linux server. And then go ahead and deploy it out to all your new servers. So this one's good stuff. So new redesigned RHEL content for developers. I think this slide got a little mixed up since we kind of talked about that. But yeah, there's new redesigned RHEL content for developers. You can download RHEL and read the latest blocks just from this website here. Other good things, Podman. For anyone who is not familiar with Podman, think of it as the equivalent of Docker, but better. They got the new version of Podman within RHEL 8.6 and RHEL 9, and you can create UBIs, or universal base images for RHEL 9, just from Podman, meaning you can create an image and you can minimize it for containers. So your containers don't necessarily need the whole image, you just need what you need. And C Group 2, that's kind of just how you control processes on the Linux node. I'm not going to go farther than that. Don't want to confuse anybody. RHEL system roles. So this is directly related to Red Hat's automation platform called Ansible. Just a little about Ansible, won't harp on it too much, but Ansible was born from the open source. It was taken by Red Hat, not taken, but hardened by Red Hat to make it enterprise ready. So that way, you can have full confidence in running this automation in your enterprise. But actually listing off these collections here. So these are supported. Certified supported, meaning Red Hat is certified they're going to work. They're going to support you if they aren't working. So if you go and download any of the others from the open source, you may not have that level of support. You have the open source community, which is great, but maybe not what you're looking for when you're having a time constraint issue. So you can manage your firewalls. You can manage your firewalls with confidence. HA clustering. So within RHEL, there's something called PCS clustering. You have Ansible roles to help manage that. If you're running Microsoft SQL on RHEL, we got that too, and SAP. Not going to mention any more on that one. Postfix, so mail, and you can also manage your IPMI hardware. So typically that means actual hardware pieces. So if you have HP, there's something called ILO. It can actually interface with that. Or Dell, I think it's iDRAC. Additional HA improvements. They've added IBM Power to the mix. Now, if anyone's used IBM Power, it's not an easy task to use it. But with Red Hat's help, they're actually helping you do it. They're helping you manage it and make sure it's safe for your enterprise. And a little bit more on the Red Hat Enterprise Linux Web Console Cockpit. They have improved it with RHEL 9. So there's the enhanced performance metrics, so you can see a lot more performance data and a history of that data. You also actually can enable your kernel live patching management. Live patching is when you don't want to reboot your server. You can actually reboot, well, not reboot, but you can restart the kernel without bringing down the whole system, which is pretty important nowadays. Normally that's a charged service at other places. Red Hat, they will work with you to figure out the best way to do that. Support for smart card authentication, like those tap and goes in hospitals. You can do badge tapping with sudo and SSH, which meaning you going into the root user, the super user, and pass through host devices to VM. So if you're RDP'd or something, you can pass through your badge holder. And you can manage your storage. That's the new Stratus. We're not going to go too deep into that one. That's more of a conversation. Best part about this new web console, you can do it from your phone. You don't need your laptop. You can open it up right on your phone, and I apologize, I don't have one on my phone right now to look up. But yeah, you can do most of what you need to do just to check something. So you can check system logs real quick. If you're at a wedding, if you're in an event like this and you're trying to troubleshoot something, listening to me, you can look at that. Performance Copilot. So basically, they're just continuing on wanting to make sure you have all the nice graphing that you need. So with this image, you can actually see everything pretty nice. So how long is your MySQL query taking? Well, you can look at that. It can get more granular with your applications. And let's talk about Protect again. So RHEL 9, with every major version with RHEL, you are being more hardened by default. They're trying to harden the OS. Obviously, you cannot mitigate every security issue in the world, but they are certainly trying. So there's enhanced logging. There's improved SE Linux performance. So if you've had issues with it, they continue to improve this to make sure it runs quicker and doesn't just bog down your system when it's denying everything. Also, you have the new version of OpenSSL, which is pretty important. So if you're doing certificates and you want people to be secure when they're connecting to your servers, pretty important. By default, this is best practice out in the world. It hasn't officially been disabled by default until recently, so RHEL 9. Root login, so when you're SSHing in, you typically don't want your root user to be able to SSH to your system. Reason being, if they do get your password, it's not your system anymore, to be honest with you. But yeah, that is disabled by default. If you want to enable it, that is your choice. It is not best practice, but again, your choice. And SHA-1, that is a very old encryption method. That is disabled. We don't want people using it anymore. cgroup 2, again, that's more around controlling processes on the Linux servers. And sub-UID support for containers. User control for actually executing containers and executing tasks from them, essentially. And I'm not going to go too deep into containers topic. All right, so why you want to trust it? They have support for all these major things. So PCI DSS, so payment, HIPAA, healthcare, even the Australian government information security. and open SCAP profile, meaning you can create profiles within Insight with all your security standards in that profile, and it'll also do a scan for you. Integrity management architecture, so your digital hashes, signatures, these are encrypted strings that nobody can get. So quick thing about Red Hat Satellite, we're not going to talk too much about it, but that's for major deployments, doing patches across a very large environment. Just so you're aware, RHEL 9 is not supported on every version. It's only supported on 6.11 right now, which will be available this summer. So it's not there yet, but soon. Red Hat Insights, we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but we'll show you this real quick. So you can kind of see some resource optimization. You have 25 instances detected. This could be all of your Linux nodes or just one that's really bad. Or here's all your CVEs. CVEs are the known security vulnerabilities. Insights is looking at all your RHEL systems to check that. And compliance, new features. Advisor is actually, IBM is working very hard with Red Hat right now, even though they are the same now, in a way, to actually include more about DB2. So that way you can actually manage it, maintain it, and optimize it properly with assistance. And compliance, just as we said, systems not showing what you want them to see. Making sure you have all your patches and vulnerabilities. So how do we get to RHEL? Pretty important way to do. So you can gain new capabilities while giving up nothing. Why do I say that? So what I'm about to show you here is more specifically for RHEL 6 and 7, not 9 yet. This is known as Convert to RHEL. It is a tool you can install on either CentOS or Oracle Linux. What does it do? It's actually taking in place, converting your Oracle Linux or CentOS box to RHEL. Instead of having to create a new server, move everything over, hope it all works, put it in production and test it, you can just do it all in place. You take maybe a short downtime, maybe an hour, hour and a half, depending on how beefy your box is, and it will convert it all in place. In the long run, that can save you time for trying to make sure you've hit every box to make sure you've migrated everything. This is just some success numbers that they've had with Convert to RHEL. So big numbers, 13,000 Oracle Linux 7 boxes, 10,000 6.5 boxes, 5,800 6.3. Now they did require Red Hat to do this. They didn't feel comfortable without their help, but again, they were successful in doing it. And maybe you're already on RHEL, but you need to get to the newer version. So if you're on 7 or 6, there is another tool called, basically an upgrade tool. I believe it's called Leap. I don't know the actual command you'll be running off the top of my head, but the nice thing is you can get from 6 to 7 and then 7 to 8. And before you upgrade, it actually will give you a little pre-upgrade report. So you'll be able to say, hey, these are potential packages that I need to do some manual intervention before I upgrade. Otherwise, you may have issues. So that report will be able to tell you everything you need to know, hopefully beforehand. Or it'll say, oh, everything's green, just go ahead and try it. And that you can do at your own risk, but I like to read those reports. Same thing with 7 to 8. You will have that report as well. This is kind of what a report would look like. So you notice these red here, it won't even let you proceed because it knows it's too high risk. So you need to mitigate it first. Medium, you can probably get by. It'll let you do it. But when you're disregarding the warnings, it's at your own risk. Now the low ones, realistically, it's not too bad, but review them is the point. Now, what about RHEL 9? It's the latest and greatest. How do we get there? We don't have a fancy tool just yet. It is a manual process at the moment, but give Red Hat time. It just came out. More than likely, it will be out there soon. But if you're going to do an in-place upgrade, you need to be on at least 8.6 to get to 9. You can't be lower. There's no way to go from 7 to 9. You do have to be on at least 8.6 to do it in place. And wrapping it up, so here's some links for you. I'm guessing we'll send this presentation out. You'll have a YouTube link if you want to learn more, Twitter, Twitch, wow. All right, Reddit and Matrix. Here's some additional shows. Red Hat actually does do like coffee hours and stuff, so there's actually pretty interesting, good topics. And a little intro to the terminal, so little learning sessions. I actually particularly like this one. If you haven't used RHEL before, this is a new thing RHEL came out with. It's called lab.redhat.com. not to be confused with labs.redhat.com. Those are two separate places. Lab is free. You don't need an account. You can actually just learn basic RHEL tasks to do. It's very useful if you've never used it or if you're just trying to learn a couple extra things. And just a few additional resources about RHEL 9. And if anyone has any questions, now's the time. I'm done harping. Yes, sir?
Are you going to post up, or when you post up a link to the system requirements for the workstation?
We can, yeah, we can get that for you. I can work with Melinda to get that out to you. Anything else? I'm normally used to be interrogating more. All right, well, if there's no questions, I'll wrap it up. Thank you for taking the time, everyone.